Hi everyone, welcome to this week's video. If you're new to my channel, my name is Lauren Conklin and I am a financial coach. Today we are going to be discussing the Iceberg Model. The Iceberg Model is a great system-based approach to solving problems, whether they be in your personal life or in your business. Oftentimes, we solve problems based on what we see at surface level. But what we don't realize is there are usually problems that are way under the surface, and what we're solving are really just the symptoms. For example, if I have a problem because I feel like I'm overweight, well, to solve that on a surface level, I will say to myself, okay, I need to eat less, exercise more, right? Calories in versus calories out, all these things. But what I am not considering are the reasons why mentally, the beliefs, the inner dialogue that is taking place that is also greatly impacting what I put in my mouth. So by looking at the system as a whole, asking myself, well, why am I not exercising? Why am I choosing unhealthy foods? Versus just trying to put out the fires as we see them, we can really have more long-lasting change. I like to relate this to The Wizard of Oz. I love that movie and I love showing it to my kids. So everyone believes that The Wizard of Oz is that huge, scary, like creepy alien-ish looking image that's being portrayed on the screen. However, Toto, the little dog, runs over and realizes, pulls the curtain so that they can all recognize that it's just an old, feeble man who is pulling all the strings of that technological monster that they're showing, the wizard that they're showing. So it's a lot like that when we think about solving our problems. What we are seeing to the eyes is a lot different than what is really behind the control panel of what's happening in our brain. But by using the Iceberg Model, we can really investigate. We can pull back that curtain. We can pull back the layers of that onion to see what the real problem is instead of just dealing with the symptoms. Just like when you're sick, if you just keep dealing with the symptoms, let's say you have the flu and you're just dealing with the runny nose and the nausea and all these things separately, but you're not recognizing the root of the problem, which is this flu or this bug that's taking over your body, and you're not using the medicine to correct that. Well, yeah, you might get rid of a symptom here or there, but new symptoms are going to pop up. And ultimately, you're not actually getting rid of this virus that has taken over you. So the Iceberg Model helps us to figure out the origin of the problem. Okay, so that we're not just simply reacting to an event, but we're actually digging deep and we are making long-lasting changes to fix it so that it doesn't happen again. And by applying the Iceberg Model, which is a 4-step approach, you're really able to get to the core issue, the root cause of the problem, and find a better fix. And if you're wondering why it's called the Iceberg Model, well, think of icebergs. You see what's on the surface above the deep blue ocean, right? But what you don't see is all of the part of the iceberg, which is usually wider and bigger underneath. And if you think of the Titanic, what had the biggest impact? What was the biggest problem? Was it what they saw at the surface? No, it was that big piece underneath that ultimately hit the bottom of the ship and caused all the destruction and tragedy. The other benefit of the Iceberg Model is that instead of just putting out fires as they happen, you're actually being proactive versus reactive, and you are going to prevent future fires from happening, because what you're going to be doing is working on the mental factors at play, which are creating these unresourceful or patterns that aren't serving us well. So the top part of the iceberg, the part that we see that's visual, is the event, the thing that's actually happening, right? It's what's visible to us. It's what's obvious to us. So for example, in my business, maybe I missed a deadline. That's the event. That's what happened, right? We've already talked about in the past the best practices for how to deal with that when dealing with your clients, and not to make excuses and to own it and to rectify the problem. But what if we look deeper onto the iceberg, we come to the next layer, which is the pattern or trend? What if we recognize that this is a pattern for us? This isn't the first time we've missed that deadline, right? So this is something that's been happening multiple times over a period of time. But this is hidden below the surface because it's not meeting the eye for that specific time where you miss that deadline. It's just something that we know is become a pattern. So then we want to go down to the next layer. So we've done the event, which was missing the deadline. Then we did the pattern or trend, which was that this has happened for multiple clients over the past maybe 6 months or so. So next we're going to look at the structure. This is the next level down. What is influencing us so that we have these patterns of behavior? So for this example, perhaps what's influencing us is that we feel very stressed about handing something over to the client until it's perfect. And we're taking all this extra time. It's done, it's completed by the deadline because, we planned it accordingly, but we just don't hand it over because we are having that need to make it absolutely perfect and check it and check it and check it and make it better and better and better and better. So that habit of not handing over the product or the service in time is based on a destructive behavior, which is that need for being perfect. Within the structure level, there are 3 subcategories that are really worth exploring. One of them is the physical aspect. So for example, if you're missing deadlines, perhaps there's easy access to disruptions, right? Like you have a Netflix subscription, or you live next door to a coffee shop and you pop in for a coffee every hour. The second one is your environment. So perhaps your home office is not set up in an optimal way for you to really focus on your work. And then the last one is your rituals. So these are those deeply embedded, integrated habits. So for instance, back to the deadlines, perhaps every time you're stumped or every time you feel like you've come to something and it's not perfect because you want things to be perfect, you abandon ship or you put it off completely, and that leads to inaction. That would be a ritual. Or perhaps you're a people pleaser, and every time you're talking with clients, even though you know that deadline is not realistic, you agree to it and you overpromise. And what that's doing is that's setting yourself up for failure in terms of meeting the deadline. And then you add in there that perfectionism piece, and it's like a double whammy. So finally, we go down to the 4th layer called the mental models. And that is, what are the beliefs that are creating or stimulating this structure, and then the pattern, and then the event. So perhaps this is coming from your childhood. Maybe you have a memory from school where you handed in a research paper or a project and you didn't get a good grade on it, and you remember thinking to yourself, that's because you handed it in without it being perfect. Or maybe you lived with 2 parents that really struggled with this idea of perfectionism. Or maybe you associate the perfectness or the perfect nature of your product, your service, and you equate that with your worth. Or perhaps you grew up in a family where, compared to your other siblings, they were able to do things the first time really well, and for you it took a lot of time to get to that level. So now you've developed this sense of this need for perfectionism in order to keep up. So at this mental model level, we're really looking at the beliefs, the principles, the values that motivate us and motivate our behaviors. When we understand the mental model layer of the iceberg, we are really understanding the core reasons that things happen in our lives. So going back to this example, maybe throughout your life, if you couldn't get things to be perfect, you felt overwhelmed and a huge wave of anxiety took over. So you would just stop, and that led to inaction, putting your head in the sand. But now what that's leading to in your business is that if it's not perfect, you just stop working on it that day, or you put it off for the next day, which is also contributing to missing that deadline. Often these concepts that are on the mental model level are so deeply embedded within our psyche that we don't even consciously know that they're there. It's almost like they're hidden to us until we do the work to uncover them, to peel back the layers, to peel back that curtain from the Wizard of Oz. And until we deliberately pull back those layers, we're going to continue to have the same outcomes, the same sabotaging behaviors or undesirable behaviors. So now that we've gone over how the iceberg model works in the 4 layers, the best way to make changes, long-lasting changes, is to attack them from the bottom up. Tackle that mental model's level first. So think about this. What are some current issues that are coming up, or problems, whether it be in work or your personal life, that are troubling to you or that are not serving you in the way that you want them to? And how could you analyze them using the iceberg model? And in your journal, write down the specific problems that are happening and draw out the model, the triangle and all, and fill in all the layers. Because being very deliberate and writing it down and being very mindful of our beliefs that are at play and that are driving our actions and are leading us to that top event, that's the only way to really make long-lasting, transformative changes. Okay guys, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you really enjoyed learning about the iceberg model, and I hope you try to implement it and apply it to your next problem or pattern of behavior that is not serving you well, is not resourceful in your life and in your business. Okay, talk to you next week. Bye-bye.